Michelle, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff in.
Huh? What do you mean?
While I was on vacation, Bob, without permission, brought his parents' moving boxes into our home. To make matters worse, Bob did something unthinkable to me.
Don't come back.
Bob clearly didn't want me to return home. This house has always been our family home, but now Bob wants to live here with his parents and kick me out. However, having already anticipated being kicked out by Bob, I retorted nonchalantly. Alrighty then. Guess I'll move out on my own. Taking advice from my father, I took certain measures. Firstly, I emailed someone and had planned meticulously. I then returned to New York with my father. After getting back home, I acted according to the plan. Bob, who had been relaxed thinking he'd live comfortably with his parents, was taken aback by this unexpected turn of events. The plan I made with my father was: my name is Michelle Smith. I'm a 45-year-old nutritionist working in a hospital. I was supposed to take over my father's business, but inheriting my mother's love for cooking, I became a nutritionist. Unfortunately, my beloved mom passed away before I graduated from college. After that, my dad started working overseas, and I sold the family house and moved to an apartment. Ever since I was a child, being quite plain-looking, I went unnoticed wherever I went. On top of that, I went to an all-girls school from middle school through college, so I never really had the chance to meet men. Up until then, I never had a boyfriend. However, my friend, blessed to meet someone special somewhere, got married after we graduated from college. At her wedding, I met Bob, who is 3 years older than me and, by the looks of it, quite a catch. He was a friend of the groom and looked like the kind of guy who was popular with the ladies. Maybe I was just lucky, but it turned out he had just broken up with his girlfriend. His ex was a nurse, and they seemed to have broken up due to her night shifts and their mismatched schedules. When I mentioned I was a nutritionist and didn't have many early mornings or weekend duties, he seemed genuinely pleased. However, at that time, I was busy studying for my exam during my free days. Even with my busy schedule, he'd send sweet messages like, "I know it's hard not seeing each other, but keep up the good work studying." He was such a kind soul. Being around him, I felt a sense of destiny and began to think, once I pass, I want to marry him. Then came the day of the exam results. Upon learning I passed, he invited me out that night to celebrate, saying,
"Congratulations! Look! I want you to have this, if you'll accept it."
He handed me what was unmistakably an engagement ring. Right then and there, he proposed. Bob's happiness over my success, as if it were his own, left me so touched that I immediately said yes, tears in my eyes. And so, our married life began. At first, we thought of renting, but with some financial help from my dad, we bought our own home. I thought every day from then on would be filled with happiness, but that wasn't to be. After getting married, there was always something off about Bob when we were together. I assumed it was because I had no experience with men and thought I'd get used to it. However, one day, Bob looked at my payslip and made a comment that had me doubting my ears. "What's this? I thought nutritionists, being professionals and all, would earn more. This is all you make? Quite a letdown."
"Excuse me? I've just started working, and since we're both earning, isn't $5,000 a month from me just fine?"
His comment left a bad taste in my mouth. It's not that I got married to be supported, but having my salary criticized wasn't pleasant. To add insult to injury, Bob began to belittle my earnings further. "Man, I feel duped. If I'd known you earned so little, I would have asked before we got married. A nurse would have surely earned more." With the mention of a nurse, I knew he was referencing his ex. Damn you, Bob. Complaining about my earnings is one thing, but comparing me to his ex was inexcusable. Certainly, as a nurse, there's the night shift differential and good pay for extra payments. Compared to that, since I have fewer early shifts and holiday work, it's understandable that my pay is lower. But I have my own complaints. I saw Bob's payslip recently, and it was even less than mine. Yet, I thought that combining both our incomes, we wouldn't struggle financially, so I said nothing. I tried to put it gently to not hurt Bob's pride. Well, Bob, it seems like you have it tough too, so you were kind of hoping my payslip would be a bit more substantial, right? Sorry, I couldn't meet your expectations.
Yeah. I work for a small business and make very little, so I was hoping for financial stability by marrying a professional woman like you.
I was just trying to cheer him up with some playful remarks, never expecting Bob to take it so seriously. Before we got married, he used to say he was glad that I had a regular working schedule. But now, it's like he's done a complete turnaround, complaining about my low income. I wonder where else in the world there are men who expect their wives to earn more than they do. I was simply astounded by Bob's lack of ambition. The moment he found out about my earnings, he began looking down on me. Yet, he can't resist buying what he wants immediately without any restraint. Even when I suggest we save a bit more, he doesn't want to hear it.
I've always gotten whatever I wanted from my parents since I was a kid. You can't just expect me to change my views on money overnight.
To Bob's childish remarks, I was at a loss for words. At his age, being spoiled by parents is hardly an excuse, isn't it? A year after our marriage, we were blessed with a baby boy. I hoped that becoming a father might change Bob, but his spending habits remained unchanged. He always spends his entire paycheck. If he's short, he sneaks into my wallet and takes money. While I was juggling work and raising our son, Kenny, Bob barely helped with the child rearing. Years flew by with us facing such challenges, and this year, Kenny is preparing for college admissions. With all the hard work in managing our finances, it seems we can just about manage to send him to college. Kenny, understanding our tight budget, said he'd try for a public university, studying day and night. Yet, Bob, his father, came up with an outrageous idea.
I bought a new car last year, so the loan payments are tough. Plus, Kenny's college admissions, right? So, I thought of selling my parents' house and having them move in with us. Hey! What are you talking about? We can't just suddenly start living with them.
Why is that, Michelle?
Our parents should get along with you, right? Living together would mean the pension money coming in, we'd be better off.
Indeed, I wasn't opposed to living with my in-laws. However, I just didn't like the way Bob would make decisions on his own. Financially speaking, as long as we don't splurge, we've managed well so far and there's no problem.
Why do you always decide things on your own, Bob? You bought that new car without consulting me at all. That's my car, I don't have to consult you about every little thing, do I?
Seeing Bob's selfish behavior, now Kenny was furious.
Dad, give it a break. When I go to college, I'll be coming home late from part-time or study. Having Grandma and Grandpa here would mean I'd have to be extra cautious. Why don't you ever discuss things properly with Mom?
Coming out of his room and suddenly raising his voice at Bob, Kenny's reaction took Bob by surprise. But the next moment, Bob turned his anger towards me, blaming me as if it was all my fault.
Kenny speaking back to me like that is because of your poor upbringing. Reflect on it.
Saying so, Bob went into the living room and didn't come out for a while. I was glad that Kenny stood up for me. However, I was concerned if this home environment would affect his exam preparations. Despite my worries, Kenny got into his top choice state university. But having grown tired of being with his father, Kenny decided to move out and live on his own. He said he wanted to try and make it on his own, working without relying on his parents. Still, Bob pretended as if nothing was wrong with either me or Kenny. Since it became just Bob and me in the Smith house, we hardly speak even though we live under the same roof. It felt suffocating. During those challenging days, feeling mentally drained, I called my father overseas to seek advice. My father was worried about me and suggested I come to his place for a while. But I have a job and can't take too much time off. I thought so, but it turns out, my colleagues were concerned about my well-being as well. When I explained the situation, they agreed to let me take a break. However, I wanted to keep the consultation with my father a secret from Bob. So, I told him I was invited on a trip by a friend. I hoped that if I left the house for a while, Bob would cool down. With that in mind, I headed to my father's place, but an unexpected event occurred. It all started with a call from Bob while I was in my father's place.
Michelle, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff in. Huh? What do you mean? I've told you before, haven't I? About living with my parents. Besides, Dad and Mom were pretty upset about you. They said a wife who spoils her son like that is the worst. You can't be serious.
I couldn't believe what Bob was saying. My in-laws shouldn't be the kind of folks who'd speak ill of me like that.
That's why, from now on, I've decided it'll be just the three of us, me and my parents, living in this house. If you were around, they'd feel like they'd have to walk on eggshells, especially since you've turned Kenny against me.
I suspected Bob might have exaggerated things when talking to my in-laws. Maybe the whole story about my in-laws being mad at me was also a fabrication. I was so mad, I wanted to shout back at him. But I kept my cool, told him I'd call him back later, and hung up. Luckily, my father was home at the time, so I immediately filled him in on the conversation. My father looked frustrated and ran his hands through his hair.
I really don't know what to say about Bob. Relying on his parents at his age. Exactly. I don't understand why I should be kicked out because of that.
After discussing for a while, my father made a suggestion. I felt elated, thinking this might put Bob in his place. I emailed someone first, then called Bob back on his cell.
Bob, I think we should sit down and talk when you're back from your trip.
I tried to sound calm, but Bob responded with a chuckle in his voice.
You're not coming back.
Following my dad's advice, Bob made it clear that he didn't want me to come home anymore. Having anticipated this, I quickly snapped back at him.
Alrighty then. Guess I'll move out on my own. Excuse me?
Perhaps taken aback by my unexpected response, Bob let out a voice of genuine surprise. But he seemed to think I was just bluffing, as he quickly laughed and retorted.
Where exactly are you planning on moving? You don't even have a place to go.
Oh, I'm already there.
What are you talking about? You're on a trip with friends. Wait, you're not with some guy, are you?
Now it seemed he was implying that I might be with another man, so I decided it was time to set the record straight.
A man?
Well, yes.
But it's just my dad. Oh, you're with your dad?
Bob sounded relieved. But he's in for another surprise.
My dad's currently living in a condo overseas, so I decided to stay with him. That's why we're gonna sell the house we lived in. What? What do you mean by that?
You knew, didn't you?
That house was built under my dad's name for us. If I'm not living there, he says he's gonna sell it. What? Mom and Dad are here right now. What are you thinking? That's what I was saying. We can't discuss this over the phone.
Bob, probably realizing the gravity of the situation, just hung up without saying another word. He probably can't imagine the drama that's awaiting him when I return to New York. A week later, my father and I returned to New York and arrived at the house where Bob was living with his parents. My in-laws greeted us with smiles at the entrance.
Oh, it's Michelle's father.
It's been a while.
Yes, indeed.
Due to work, I rarely get the chance to visit New York. I'm truly grateful for all the care you've shown Michelle. As my father exchanged pleasantries, Bob sheepishly emerged from behind them. From his nervous demeanor, I gathered he hadn't told my in-laws about selling the house yet. All Bob did was bow his head in embarrassment.
Bob, the movers are coming to pick up our stuff today. Did you pack everything up? Yeah, I've packed all of your stuff. Oh? They're not just here for my things. What? My stuff needs to be out today too?
Bob's loud, surprised exclamation caught my father-in-law's attention. What's going on, Bob? Why are you moving your stuff too? Bob awkwardly looked towards my father-in-law and nervously began to explain the situation. Suddenly, my father-in-law became furious and began yelling at Bob.
You lied to me. I heard that this house was bought under your name with a loan. Thinking we could chip in, we decided to move in with you. You've embarrassed us. I won't forgive this.
Bob looked utterly defeated, as if he had been struck by lightning, by my father-in-law's booming voice. Just then, a moving company's truck arrived. After they finished moving my stuff out, my mother-in-law came out from the back of the house to handle the movers.
Thank you for your hard work. Our stuff is right here, so please go ahead and move it.
My mother-in-law had already neatly packed everything from around the house, including Bob's belongings. Bob was left in shock at my mother-in-law's actions.
Mom, what are you doing? Where are you planning to take even Dad's stuff?
Seeing Bob question my mother-in-law with wide eyes, all of us burst into laughter.
You got tricked, Bob. Huh? Why is everyone laughing all of a sudden?
Yes, actually, all of us present had previously planned to trick Bob. The first person I had contacted from overseas by email was my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law had always been concerned about the tired look on my face. Having been asked about it many times, I told my mother-in-law everything about Bob. Especially about how he blamed his extravagant behavior on being spoiled by his parents. At that story, my mother-in-law was shocked. And then, she broke down in tears in front of me, apologizing for the way she raised him, making me feel really awkward. But, the fact that Bob was wasting money wasn't really my mother-in-law's fault. While I tried to comfort her, saying so, the bond between my mother-in-law and me deepened. And now, for me, who didn't have a mother, my mother-in-law had truly become someone I could confide in about anything. My father knew well about my close relationship with my mother-in-law. So, for this plan, I had asked my father to get my in-laws' help. And, without Bob finding out, my mother-in-law consulted with my father-in-law and found a new place for them to live. In fact, the earlier scene where my father-in-law yelled at Bob was all an act. It was such a great performance that I almost burst into laughter in the middle.
Thank you for arranging the movers for my stuff as well. Now, I can move to the house my father built overseas. No, thank you. I'm really sorry. Because I raised such a son, I've only caused trouble for you, Michelle.
Wasn't that an unspoken agreement between us? My mother-in-law and I shared a laugh over that comment. Bob seemed taken aback. He had no idea I was so close with my in-laws. His face was a picture of confusion.
Mom, where are we gonna move to now? We already sold our old family home. We already arranged a new place for us.
Bob looked relieved to hear that. But his sense of relief would likely be short-lived, as he'd soon find out.
Oh, so that's settled then. I was worried for nothing. So, I just move in with you guys?
What are you talking about?
It's a senior living community for your father and me. You're not a kid anymore, Bob. You need to find your own place.
As soon as my mother-in-law said that, Bob's face turned completely pale.
I can't do that. I don't even have the money to move, let alone find a new place.
The truth was, Bob had been wasting all his earnings on hobbies and entertainment, leaving him with no savings. There was no one to blame but himself. In his desperation, he looked at me with pleading eyes. I had a good idea of what he was about to ask.
Speaking of which, Michelle, doesn't your dad own a pretty big house overseas? I had no idea you came from such a wealthy background. Come on, I'll do whatever you say from now on. Can't you take me to live with you there?
He suddenly changed his tone, trying to butter me up. I wasn't buying any of it and responded firmly.
I've been deceived by your sweet words too many times before. You've been unreliable, never contributing enough for our living expenses, and always out having fun. I don't want to be married to you anymore. I talked to Kenny on the phone yesterday, and we both agree that divorce is the best option.
I had finally let out everything that had been weighing on my mind. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. My in-laws seemed to agree, nodding gravely.
Oh man, what am I gonna do now?
Bob lamented, tears filling his eyes. But my mind was made up. I handed him the divorce lawyer's contact and papers I had prepared earlier, asking for his signature. But Bob was stubborn and refused it. Seeing this, my father-in-law's face turned stern.
Bob, it's about time you face reality. You've put Michelle through enough. And now you're trying to rely on her family's wealth? I'm ashamed to call you my son. That's right, I know we've pampered you, but you're a grown man now. You can't always get your way. You need to stand on your own 2 feet.
Faced with this earnest plea from his parents, big tears rolled down Bob's cheeks.
What's the deal? Even Dad and Mom? Is there no one on my side here?
Bob mumbled to himself as he agreed to discuss further through the lawyer. He then finished storing his belongings in the storage unit and left the house alone. Feeling betrayed by his parents whom he thought were his allies, he seemed deeply hurt. However, my in-laws had made up their minds to sever ties with Bob. It wasn't just my in-laws, though. I too had promised Bob that I would never let him see Kenny again. That's because Kenny had been adamant about it. Ever since he was a child, Kenny had despised Bob, who had never acted much like a father. So, when we decided to divorce, Kenny told me he wanted to cut ties with his father too. I believed it was for the best for Kenny. After being abandoned by his parents and disowned by his son, perhaps Bob lost the will to live. Having lost everything, Bob spent some time living in motels. But after he got paid, it seems he managed to move to a small apartment. During the divorce, I did give Bob some money as part of our shared assets. Technically, he didn't really deserve much, but I was well off and gave him some money to avoid any financial disputes later on. In other words, it was sort of a severance pay. However, as soon as Bob had a little financial stability, he seemed to get into singles mixers and city social events. Why do I know this? Because Bob messaged me saying, "Gonna find a well-off woman and show me up." In the beginning, right after being alone, Bob would just message saying he was lonely. But once he had money, his attitude changed. Time passed, and suddenly, I stopped hearing from Bob. I thought he might have found a new girlfriend, but it seems the situation was far more severe. According to my former in-laws, it appears Bob fell head over heels for a nurse he met at one of the mixers. However, despite her not being interested at all, Bob kept pursuing her relentlessly. At its worst, he even showed up at her apartment unannounced. As a result of his persistent stalking, she reported him and he was arrested on the spot. They thought they had finally severed ties with their son, were now overwhelmed with his mess, which was truly unfortunate. Being a parent is tough. No matter how much you want to let go, you're still responsible when things go south. Despite causing so much trouble for his parents, Bob still hasn't learned his lesson. Throughout the interrogation, he kept insisting it was true love. As a result, it seems he's deemed unrepentant and isn't getting released anytime soon. Well, maybe it's best for a guy like that to cool his heels in prison for a while. It's one thing when you're young, but a penniless man nearing 50 clinging to such ideals is just gonna be a nuisance. And now, I'm living a luxurious life in a condo with my father. I'm still getting used to this new environment, so I'm not working yet. However, I can't be without a job forever, so I'm attending a local conversation classes. Once I get a good grasp of the language, I plan to help out at my father's company. Time flew by and Kenny graduated from college. He moved to here around the same time and started working at my father's company. Turns out, my father always intended to have Kenny as his successor and had invited him here. I missed Kenny so much these past 4 years, but now we can live together forever. Thinking of this makes me so happy. Now, having become fairly familiar with the place, I assist my father at his company and also work as an instructor at a local American cooking class on the side. Since it's a unique class, now a bit famous in the area, so I have lots of students. Being one of the few American instructors here, I'm quite popular among my students. Even though my marriage didn't work out, my life here is very fulfilling now. Even though I'm in my mid-40s, I'd say I'm in the perfect environment to enjoy life to the fullest. I've decided to forget about my past where I was plain and not very popular, and to live life positively from now on. After all, I have a long way to go. I'm sure my mother in heaven is watching over me.
Uncle, the woman inside the drum is still alive.
That day, with just a sentence from my niece, everything changed.
I've been thinking of getting a divorce. I don't think I can make you happy anymore, Susan. I think it's best for you if we separate.
At first glance, those words seem considerate, like they came from a caring husband. If I didn't know any better, I might have believed them. I only love you, Michelle. I don't feel anything for Susan anymore. Those were the words he told his mistress, revealing his true feelings. He chose her over me. I had always tried to maintain a peaceful life, always observing Paul's behavior. What was I striving for all this time? I can't possibly forgive Paul or his mistress. Thinking they have me fooled, I began preparations to get back at them. I won't let them have their way. My name is Susan Smith, 47 years old. I married Paul when I was 23. We both worked, and while we didn't have children, we lived happily. And my younger sister, Natalie, lives nearby. Though Natalie's much younger than me, we often had meals together and hung out, and we got along really well. Her daughter, Emma, often came to visit. Emma has been fond of me since she was little and is such an adorable niece. She possesses a somewhat mysterious power. I came to know of this when we went to the cemetery together. It was the first time Emma visited my grandmother's grave. She shouldn't have known the location. Yet, Emma walked straight to my grandmother's grave. She reached it before anyone else. Surprised, I asked her, "Hey, Emma, how did you know where the grave was?" "She told me, my great-grandma showed me the way." Emma had recognized my grandmother from photographs. Other times, using her mysterious power, Emma would predict things like, "Aunt Susan, Grandma's coming over today," when my mother was planning a surprise visit. Maybe she had a stronger sixth sense than most people. I thought our peaceful days would continue. But suddenly, Paul started avoiding me. He would come home late, stopped eating at home, and tried to avoid conversations. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd just say he was tired from work. I thought if I gave it some time, things would return to normal. But Paul's attitude remained unchanged. Before I knew it, I started treading carefully, watching his mood. "Can we talk about tomorrow's plans? I'm tired from work." "You handle it. I'm gonna sleep." "All right then." I wondered if we would ever return to the way things were. One day, when Paul was on a business trip, Natalie and Emma came over. We had fun during the day, but as the time for Paul to return approached, Emma's mood changed. Worried, I asked her if she felt all right. "Emma, are you okay? Feeling sick?" "Nah, not that. Just got a bad vibe." While they were talking, Paul came home. "Welcome back. Must have been a tiring day." "I'm exhausted, gonna take a bath right away," Paul replied curtly, showing little emotion. Then Emma approached with a shocking statement. "Uncle, the woman in the barrel is still alive." I couldn't make sense of her words. Paul, on the other hand, was clearly shaken. "What are you talking about? Stop saying weird stuff, Emma. I'm really tired." Saying this, he hastily retreated to the bathroom. After Paul was out of sight, I had to ask Emma again. "Emma, what you said earlier?" I hesitantly inquired. "Uncle is hiding something. I think he's up to no good," Emma said, her face full of sadness. Something was off about Paul, and Emma's words were concerning. I decided it'd be best for Natalie and Emma to go home for the night. I tried to organize the chaos in my mind. First, the barrel. Is there really a living person inside? I wanted to check immediately, but I didn't even know where the barrel was. And there's no way Paul would tell me if I asked. But I felt I couldn't just sit around waiting. While I was thinking, Paul came out of the bathroom. He said, "Just remembered something I gotta do," and headed out. I found it suspicious, but I knew he probably wouldn't let me tag along. We only have one car, and even if I called a cab, I wouldn't make it in time. Plus, if there really was someone in the barrel, it could be dangerous if I interfered. On impulse, I slipped a voice recorder into Paul's jacket pocket before handing it to him. In his hurry, Paul took the jacket without noticing and left. I prayed he wouldn't notice and that the recorder would capture everything. Late at night, Paul finally returned. I pretended to be asleep and observed him. Once he was sure I was home, Paul fell asleep. I took the opportunity to retrieve the voice recorder from his jacket. Listening to the recording was nerve-wracking, but I steeled myself and pressed play. To my relief, it had worked, and I could hear Paul's mutterings.
Michelle's still alive. What am I gonna do?
It seemed he had some idea about the situation. The other person was indeed a woman named Michelle. After driving for some time, it sounded like Paul reached his destination as I heard the car stop and the door open. Then, I heard what sounded like a metal lid opening, followed immediately by a woman's angry voice.
Hey! What were you planning on doing with me? Don't play games!
Even without seeing her, it was clear she was furious. I felt relieved to know she was okay. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm truly sorry. From the conversation, I pieced together the situation. They had been having secret rendezvous under the pretense of business trips. However, at some point, they had an argument, and in a fit of rage, Paul pushed Michelle. She hit her head and passed out, and in his panic, Paul hid her inside a barrel. When I heard the story, it sent shivers down my spine. I thought, did Paul really do something that horrible? Anyway, Paul kept apologizing to Michelle. Yet Michelle seemed far from calming down, continuing to yell. Then, after a while, she seemed to come up with an idea and began to speak.
You know, I could report this to the police. Your business would be done for. If you don't want that, give me some money.
Please, anything but that. I'll pay for the medical expenses. Just forgive me. It seemed that wasn't enough for Michelle.
You think I'd forgive you just for some medical bills after what you did? Divorce your wife now. From now on, devote yourself to me. If you do, I won't go to the police. Simple, right? If that's what you want, I'll divorce her right away. The only person I love is you, Michelle. I have no feelings left for Susan. So, please, don't go to the police.
After that, a recording captured the two discussing how to divorce without losing money. For both our sakes, it'd be bad if Susan found out about us. If we play our cards right, maybe the business can be just ours. I turned off the voice recorder. Paul had declared his love for his affair partner, Michelle, not me. Was it so easy for Paul to think about divorcing me? I had sensed an emotional distance from Paul's behavior. Yet, being told he'd chosen his mistress over me brought an indescribable sadness and emptiness. Had they been involved since Paul began acting distant towards me? The more I thought about it, the darker my emotions became. But I couldn't wallow in despair now. I had to grasp the situation and pull myself together. Michelle was demanding medical fees. And Paul had declared he would divorce me. The more I thought, the angrier I got. I won't let them have their way. I will never forgive them for deceiving me all this time. With that in mind, I came up with a plan. I decided to let them believe they had the upper hand for a while. Several weeks later, Paul told me he wanted a divorce. Probably a plan he concocted with Michelle. His tone wasn't the usual assertiveness, he seemed to be gauging my reaction.
I've been thinking of divorcing. I don't feel like I can make you happy anymore, Susan. I think setting you free is best for you.
He clearly had no clue I knew everything. He emphasized he was doing it for my sake. Seeing him act this way made me hold back my anger.
If that's your decision, I won't stop you. Fine.
I agreed to the divorce too.
Thanks. I'm sorry this is so sudden. About the business.
We ran a small business together. Paul wanted to take over as CEO.
I want you to live freely without being tied to the business. Of course, I'll still give you money as a co-owner. That's fair, right?
I knew what he was up to. But for now, I didn't confront him. If I can get my share, then it's fine.
Thanks for understanding.
So, can we proceed through lawyers from now on? Paul handed me a lawyer's business card.
Okay, got it.
Well, thanks for everything. With that, Paul quickly left the house. He was probably heading to Michelle's. Just imagining them celebrating the divorce made me furious and hollow. But I had anticipated this, and I kept reassuring myself. The important part was yet to come. I whispered to myself.
Enjoy your fleeting happiness for now.
A few months after the divorce, Paul and Michelle stormed into my house.
Hey! Our business sponsor's gone. The company's in ruins. This is your doing, isn't it?
Paul shouted the moment I opened the door. Michelle was right beside him. It was our first face-to-face meeting, and she was glaring at me furiously.
Anyway? We're talking about something so important, and you bring that up? This is also important. It seems like you haven't transferred the money to me yet?
Paul flinched for a moment.
Well, the company's operations haven't been going smoothly. You understand that, right? We're talking about matters related to company management here. Think it through, will you? Susan! Just because your husband left you, are you seeking revenge? You know that'll only harm you in the end, right? Are you dense or something?
Not just Paul, but Michelle too seemed to mock me with that attitude. I let out a heavy sigh.
Don't you remember? Who established this company, and who granted the loan?
The company we had been running was sponsored by my father. My father is a CEO who runs several businesses.
It's your father, isn't it? I know that much. Then why did you assume he would continue to support us like before?
Originally, I was the one managing the company as its president. Paul had no experience in management. Thus, ever since he took over, our company's sales had plummeted. I thought it was only natural. After all, I started the business and Paul, who hadn't learned a thing about management, couldn't suddenly become proficient. He didn't even ask for any handover details when he said he'd be taking over. Why couldn't he understand such a simple thing?
What do you mean? It's our company. The reason the business didn't succeed is because you didn't help me out. And now you're demanding money while doing nothing? You must be kidding.
You were the one who decided to give me the money, weren't you?
Besides, you told me to do as I please. Also, what did you ever do for me while I was president?
When I was president, Paul hardly did anything. All he did was go on so-called business trips, which were just greetings to clients and occasional parties. I wonder what he's getting at. Unable to counter my valid points, Paul stood there, his face turning red with anger.
Come on! It's your company too, isn't it? Stop complaining and cooperate.
When Paul remained silent, Michelle chimed in.
You might not know, but Paul injured me. If I go to the police, it'd be considered assault.
Michelle seemed oddly proud as she declared this. Probably this was her trump card.
If that's the case, you should go to the police without telling me.
Brushing off her threat, Michelle's face turned beet red with anger.
You can pretend to be tough all you want. But if this gets out, your company is finished. If you don't want that to happen, you better do something about it.
With an annoyingly high-pitched voice, Michelle yelled. Slightly annoyed, I began to speak. Let me clarify it for you.
My father has decided to stop sponsoring this company. Are you kidding?
Paul looked visibly shaken.
What are you doing on your own? This also concerns you, you know? It's just about a little money. That's right. You're the one who's gonna lose out. I guess you really are dense, aren't you, Susan?
I handed them a piece of paper.
I have no ties with this company anymore. I've already applied for my resignation, and it's been accepted. Since you took over as president, I'm not needed anymore.
Both Paul and Michelle were taken aback.
Just because you quit, you're gonna do this? To even ask your father to sink this company? That's way too much, even for you.
No, you're mistaken.
My father thinks investing in a company that's not profitable is a waste. He stopped sponsoring it. It's not something I requested. The real reason is your lack of management skills.
It was irritating to be blamed by Paul when he was the one at fault. I stated the facts to him and gave him a slight smile.
I can't believe you do something so cruel. I can't believe you're this kind of person.
Paul is still blaming me. Acts like he's done nothing wrong. Doesn't he know how to reflect on his actions? So, I went and got something from the room. Y'all haven't reflected at all. Nothing but excuses. I can't stand listening. Who really did the terrible thing here? What I brought were numerous pieces of evidence of their affair. The day I found out about the affair, I had hired a private investigator. I had been gathering evidence of their affair. All to make them pay for what they did.
You thought I didn't know you two were having an affair? Wait, this isn't right. This is after our divorce, right? Stop making stuff up.
Look at the date here. It's before our divorce. You said you were out meeting folks, but you were seeing her.
I just happened to run into Michelle.
Paul is trying to make excuses. Seeing this, Michelle, who had been silent, starts to defend herself too.
I didn't know he was married. I was just deceived. I didn't intend to have an affair.
Playing the victim, Michelle tries to get out of it. I began to speak. Michelle, you knew he was married at this time, right? I have a voice recording of you talking about it. Confronted with the evidence, Michelle went from meek to snarky with a click of her tongue. So that's her true nature, I thought. Cheating, taking my company, and not paying the money you promised. Who's really in the wrong here? The two who were shouting just moments ago are now silent, looking down. I handed each of them an envelope. What's this? Why are you giving me one too? Michelle, receiving the envelope, was shaken. Why? It's to claim damages. I had prepared claim forms for compensation against both of them for this day. I was hesitant to give them, but after seeing the two of them making excuses without any remorse, I decided to set things right. Paul finally started to apologize after all I had done to him.
Susan! I'm sorry, it's all my fault. It was just a momentary lapse. I'll break up with her and never contact her again. So let's start over. Hey! Are you kidding? You're just gonna run away? Shut up. I don't want to deal with you anymore. Nothing good ever happens. That's what I should be saying.
The two began hurling insults at each other. Why does he think he can be forgiven now? Watching their ugly argument, I wondered why I ever married someone like him. Any happy memories I had with Paul seemed to vanish. Why would you think we can start over? There's no way I'm going back to you. You better pay the damages and the back payments. I made it clear to them both.
No way.
Paul sank to his knees.
I'm not paying this.
As she discarded the envelope and tried to leave, I told her. I know your address. I'll send another bill. Upon hearing this, Michelle finally seemed to resign herself and apologized.
I'm sorry for cheating. I won't tell the police that Paul hurt me. I'll return Paul to you. So can you drop the compensation claim?
Michelle was nearly in tears. Oh, why? I don't want Paul back, and since you said you'd go to the police, I've already called them.
What?
I had called the police when I went to get the evidence of the affair. Go ahead and tell the police about the harm you received from this man. I won't drop the compensation claim either.
Hey! Susan, are you kidding me? You don't care what happens to me or the company?
Just then, the police arrived. Michelle, seemingly resigned, told the police about the injury she had received from Paul. I handed over a voice recorder to the police as evidence. I'm not on Michelle's side, but what Paul did is unforgivable. He should face proper judgment. We'll take a detailed statement at the station, said the officer. It seems Michelle was going too, as a victim. Haven't you been to the police station before? The officer asked her. Michelle flinched, looking downcast, and got into the patrol car.
Susan, help me!
Paul, looking dazed, pleaded in a desperate voice. We're strangers now. Reflect on your actions, I said, watching Paul being taken away. Paul was charged with assault for harming Michelle. Not only did he have to compensate me, but he also had to settle with Michelle, which left him in significant debt. Furthermore, Michelle frequently had run-ins with the police due to relationship troubles. This time, she was the victim, but the police sternly warned her about her behavior. She was drawn to Paul because of his business title. However, with Paul's title gone and him in massive debt, her interest would likely wane quickly. I don't know what their relationship is now. Michelle has been paying me the compensation properly, so I don't feel the need to pry further. All I wish is for both Paul and Michelle to truly reflect on their actions. That's all. Paul's company soon went bankrupt after he became the representative. I established a new company and rehired all the employees from the previous one. I felt it wasn't right to drag the employees into our mess. Initially, I worked out of obligation. But now, I find fulfillment in my work, and I want to work hard for the sake of my employees and my expectant father.
You smile a lot more these days, Aunt Susan,
said Emma, whom I met after a long time. After parting ways with Paul, I decided to live for myself. Not constantly worrying about Paul's mood, but valuing my own feelings. I visit places I want to, dine with the people I want to meet, and lead a fulfilling life. Running the company by myself has also made finances easier to manage, with fewer unnecessary expenses like pointless business trips. The work environment improved for my employees too. Apparently, Paul was harsh with them, and his absence made their lives easier. I regret not noticing Paul's unjust behavior sooner. From now on, I must ensure not only the company's well-being but also that of the employees. In retrospect, without Emma's remark, I might have remained oblivious. I might have remained married to Paul, unaware of his affair, possibly losing both the company and all my money. I owe it all to you, Emma. Thank you. I believe Emma helped me out. Seeing my gratitude, Emma gave a bright smile. Our issues had settled, and Emma's mysterious power seemed to have diminished. Perhaps her power existed just to help me, I sometimes pondered. When I discovered the affair and faced the divorce, I was devastated and overwhelmed with sadness. Perhaps our marriage wasn't as smooth as I thought. But I can change the course of my future. Surrounded by loved ones and engaging in work I love. I don't want to dwell on past failures but want to move forward, looking ahead. The upscale restaurant I was invited to by Jennifer. Before eating, I went to the restroom. As I was about to return to the private room, I faintly heard Jennifer's voice through the slightly opened sliding door. Yeah, Mike, he makes over $100,000 a year, but he's so stingy. She seemed to be complaining to someone on the phone.
The wife doesn't have inheritance rights?
I know.
But what belongs to the in-laws belongs to the wife. If he's hoarding it, I guess I'll have to use it.
I was shocked. I thought she was cheerful and bubbly, completely opposite to me, but I wanted to get along. I started to feel sorry for thinking that way. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Unforgivable. I bit my lip. I'm gonna expose all the sneaky things she's been doing. You better brace yourself. My name is Susan. I'm a 67-year-old homemaker. I worked part-time for many years but retired after getting seriously ill. With the inheritance from my husband, who passed away 5 years ago, and my pension, I can live comfortably as long as I don't indulge too much. Now, I attend my choir hobby group 3 times a week and find joy in tending to my garden in between. I was worried about my son being single, but last year, he married Jennifer, whom he met at a city mixer. She's a bit flashy but a cheerful and beautiful woman. Turns out, they had secretly been dating for about a year. To my surprise, she proposed to Mike, saying, "I fell for your sincere personality. Let's get married." Mike works for a major company and earns well, so he gladly accepted Jennifer's wish to quit her job after getting married. Once they have a child and need money for education, Jennifer plans to work part-time again. They're both in their 30s. I thought they were cutting it close if they wanted to have kids, but I held my tongue, thinking they must have their reasons. Living about a 15-minute drive away in a condo, they visit during holidays and extended weekends. They help with yard work, accompany me on shopping trips, and even visit our ancestors' graves, which is a huge help. I believed our relationship would continue at this comfortable distance. Well, until that incident happened. I heard that Jennifer's hobby is trying out different eateries. Given her slender figure and pretty face, it's hard to imagine, but she says she has a metabolism where she doesn't gain weight and she frequently visits trendy spots she finds on social media and enjoys lunches at famous hotels. A full-time homemaker, and her hobby is dining out? Is she spending the money my son earns on transportation and meals? Such thoughts crossed my mind, but then I thought maybe she's using her own savings, so I refrained from prying too much. Then, about a month later, Jennifer invited me for lunch. We met directly at the venue and I followed her into a chic restaurant. This place was featured on a gourmet TV show. Their crab cream croquettes are to die for. Even celebrities have raved about it.
Oh, that's a bummer. I can't eat it.
When the waiter came to take our order and I opted for the pork cutlet sandwich set, a look of discomfort crossed Jennifer's face.
Susan, at your age, do you still have food preferences? No, I have a shellfish allergy.
Shell, what? Jennifer's fake eyelashes fluttered as she opened her eyes wide in surprise.
I'm allergic to things like crab and shrimp. If I eat them, I get hives or stomach aches. It started suddenly when I became an adult.
Can't you just keep eating and eventually get over it?
No way. If I have a severe reaction, it could be life-threatening.
Oh, sounds like a hassle. I was irked by Jennifer's comment, but more than that, I was dumbfounded by her lack of knowledge. I assumed someone from the younger generation would be more informed. Maybe she's uninformed because she doesn't have kids. However, that wasn't the end of it. It seemed like Jennifer had no intention of remembering my allergy. Despite mentioning it multiple times, she'd forget and offer me dishes with crab or shrimp. Once, during a meal out with my son included, she tried to order a shrimp fry set on my behalf, and another time, she served shrimp gratin when I visited her home.
Jennifer, remember my mom has a shellfish allergy. She can't eat crab or shrimp.
When Mike would gently remind her, Jennifer would look sad, her eyebrows drooping, and let out a sigh.
I made it especially for Susan.
I'm sorry.
I'll eat it later.
Such conversations became a regular occurrence. And every time as I was leaving, Mike would apologize.
I'm sorry, Mom. Jennifer's forgetful. I owe her so much for her cheerful personality, so it's hard to confront her.
I was like, I'm the one who should apologize. When Mike apologizes to me, I just can't find it in me to complain. I'd reply, forcing a smile and apologizing even when I'd done nothing wrong. After a year, Jennifer, who finally remembered that I have a shellfish allergy, began to frequently invite me out for meals. I've heard that Mike, who's busy with work, often has dinner with his juniors and colleagues. Probably she doesn't want to eat alone, which is why she invited me. While I appreciate the invitations, it's problematic when she drops by unannounced. Even though I've retired from my job, I still have commitments and plans. Especially on my choir practice days, I have to send Jennifer away. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and when there's a tournament or a music performance coming up, there's practice on weekends and holidays too. So, I really wish she'd call before coming. I've told her countless times, but Jennifer always pops in unexpectedly. The other day, she confronted me loudly at the front door.
Who's more important to you, me or your choir?
Obviously, the choir. I almost blurted out that, but I held back and ambiguously smiled, saying, I'm sorry, and started my car. Of course, when I'm free, I try to accommodate her as much as possible. However, the restaurants Jennifer prefers are always the high-end ones that are popular on TV or in magazines. But since she's making the effort to invite me, I can't let my daughter-in-law pay, so I end up footing the bill. And every time when the bill comes, Jennifer shows the mobile phone hanging around her neck to the cashier. Please add the points. Yes. Every single time she dines and drinks on my dime, she cleverly gets the loyalty points. When I vented to a friend, they assumed I was just bragging about my good fortune. Being invited out by such a sweet daughter-in-law? They told me I should be grateful. Spending hundreds of dollars every time we eat out seems a bit much to me. But it's not like I'm struggling financially, and considering it's a way to bond with my daughter-in-law, it's hard to refuse. One day, as these frustrations accumulated, I received a call from Jennifer. Bracing myself for another dining invitation, I was surprised by the bubbly tone in her voice.
"Hey Susan, did you win the county choir competition?"
It seems Mike told her. I couldn't hide the pride in my voice.
"Yes, I did. We're finally going to the national competition."
"That's great. That's impressive."
"Thank you."
I couldn't help but smile. It's always nice to hear words of congratulations. Then Jennifer made a surprising offer.
"Why don't we celebrate at a nice restaurant? And don't worry, it's on us."
"That's sweet of you.
Are you sure?
You don't have to do this." Given her usual choice of upscale places, when Jennifer mentions a nice restaurant, I can't help but think she'll pick somewhere super fancy, and it gets me all jittery.
"It's all good. How about Le Rouge Aurora, the gourmet restaurant near the next station?"
I hesitated for a moment. Sensing that, Jennifer said with a chuckle,
"They don't just have crab dishes there. I've heard from friends that their French cuisine is exquisite. I'll send you some pictures now, let me know what you think."
"All right." My phone dinged as Jennifer sent over the images. My eyes widened in delight. Escargots in garlic butter, duck confit, and steak frites with béarnaise sauce. Each gourmet dish looked mouth-wateringly delicious. I replied to Jennifer that I'd be happy to try them out, and she sent back a smiling emoji saying she'd book a table for the three of us. I had already celebrated with my choir group, but getting to celebrate with family was unexpected. The bad impression I had of Jennifer started to fade, and I eagerly counted down the days. On the day, I met Jennifer near the station.
"Mike's gonna be late because of work. If our order arrives first, go ahead and start without him."
"Okay. It must be tough working on weekends." Walking down the brightly lit street filled with restaurants, we arrived at a restaurant with an elegant and exclusive atmosphere. It was the restaurant we had booked. Upon entering and stating our reservation, we were guided to a private room. On the wall was a classic French painting, and through the window, a beautiful view of a French-style garden could be seen. The room had an old-world elegance typical of a traditional French manor.
"Susan, do you need to use the restroom?"
"Yes, I'll go ahead." I placed my purse down and got up. A few years ago, after a certain illness, I had told Jennifer I needed to frequent the bathroom more. As I was about to return to our private room from the restroom, I heard Jennifer's voice through the slightly opened sliding door.
"Right, even though Mike earns over $100,000 a year, he's such a miser."
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded like she was complaining to someone over the phone. I hid behind the sliding door, trying to listen in more.
"I know a wife doesn't have inheritance rights, but whatever his parents own is mine too. If they're saving up, I might as well spend it."
I was frozen in shock when someone gently tapped on my shoulder. I turned around, stifling a scream. A woman in an elegant evening gown gestured for me to be quiet. It was the restaurant owner I'd seen in their official video. She gestured towards a different private room further back, leading the way. Once inside, she, with her elegantly poised fingers, closed the door and with a tense expression shared something with me.
"Ms. White, please get out of here right now."
"Huh?" Looking surprised, she spoke to me with a serious expression.
"I know it's presumptuous to ask you to trust a stranger like me, but everything I'm about to tell you is the truth."
"Okay."
"Actually, Jennifer White visited our place with an acquaintance of mine in the past."
The restaurant owner then told me about the conversation she overheard at that time. I listened with a mix of skepticism and belief, and was left speechless by the shocking revelation. As I processed the information, anger began to bubble up within me. So, Jennifer had planned this all along. Unforgivable. I bit my lip. I'm gonna expose everything she's been doing behind the scenes. She better be ready. Still shaken by the restaurant owner's story, I left my private room, headed straight for the entrance, and walked out. On my way home, I called the police for advice, which eased my anxiety a bit. After arriving home, I acted like I knew nothing and contacted Jennifer.
"I'm sorry. I felt sick, so I had to leave early. That throws off my plans."
"Oh, never mind. Her hurried attempt to play it off convinced me that the restaurant owner's words must be true. To my surprise, I was disappointed. I guess a part of me wanted to believe her.
I'm really sorry. I'll treat you to dinner at another place as an apology.
Okay. After hanging up with Jennifer, I called another number and relayed our conversation. A week later, I called Jennifer. In an apologetic tone, I made a suggestion.
I'm really sorry about the other day. As an apology, how about dinner at the popular beef bourguignon restaurant, Le Fleur?
Wait, you got a reservation at Le Fleur? Awesome! I could hear Jennifer's excitement over the phone. What's going on? Suddenly, a young man's voice came from her end. It seems like someone is with Jennifer. We're getting a free meal at Le Fleur. No way. That's cool.
Jennifer, are you with a friend?
Oops, yeah. I'm having dinner with a friend. Let me know the details later. Looking forward to it. After the call ended, I held on to my phone for a while.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it, too.
With a smirk, I whispered to myself. A month later, right on time for our rendezvous, I met up with Jennifer and entered a restaurant. It had a different vibe from the traditional diners, cooler and more stylish. Upon being guided to a private room, Jennifer looked puzzled.
A table for 4? Are 2 more people coming?
I replied with a bright smile.
Yes, I invited a couple of friends. One of them you're quite familiar with. Oh, I need to use the restroom.
Be right back. Just like the last time, I left my purse in the room and stepped out briefly. Jennifer seemed concerned about the other patrons at first, but as soon as the lavish meal was served, she seemed completely captivated by it. Her eyes lit up, and she licked her lips in anticipation.
This is my first time eating this. The crispy coating and the fatty part are exquisite.
It's completely different from the pork cutlets in ordinary restaurants.
The vegetable cream soup with the herbs is delicious too.
After such a conversation, just as we were about to dig into the main course, beef bourguignon, there was a soft knock and the wooden door opened. As Jennifer was poking the vibrant ruby red beef with her fork, she reflexively looked towards the door and exclaimed in surprise.
Bob? Why are you here?
You invited me here, didn't you? Promised me some premium beef bourguignon.
I didn't call you. Who's that woman with you?
Standing next to the young man was the restaurant owner from the restaurant I had visited a few days ago.
I didn't invite her.
Come on, Sarah, explain. The restaurant owner stepped forward in front of an anxious Bob and gracefully bowed her head. Nice to meet you, Jennifer. I'm Sarah, Bob's ex-girlfriend. Thank you for visiting our restaurant twice. Oh, I see.
You're the restaurant owner from that place we went to the other day.
Yes, I invited Bob.
Oh, and what does an ex want?
Jennifer, seemingly eager to get back to her meal, narrowed her eyes suspiciously at Sarah.
Just thought I should let you know, the conversation you had at our restaurant the other day was clearly audible outside.
Both Jennifer and Bob went pale instantly.
You were still there? And you're the restaurant owner now? Eavesdropping on your guests? That's not professional at all.
I was just going to close the slightly ajar door when I overheard some dangerous talk. You're as careless as ever. In front of the flustered pair, Sarah took out her cell phone and played a recording. Jennifer and Bob's conversation played through the static.
When I snooped around Susan's place, I found a notebook with her pin. Since I peeked, I got it all figured out.
Heh, careless.
She'd never suspect her family would snoop. Couldn't find the bank card, but with online banking, as long as I have the PIN, I can transfer it all to my account.
Jennifer and Bob looked down, growing increasingly nervous.
When Susan goes to the restroom, I'll grab her credit card. Then, I'll drug her drink, order a ton more food, and just leave. She won't be able to pay, and might even get arrested. It'll be hilarious.
The content was so despicable that I felt like I was going to pass out. Did I really bring someone like her into my family?
I have to get all of my father-in-law's inheritance. I'll max up the credit card by buying stuff too. They're rich, but they live so frugally. They must have a stash hidden somewhere.
Jennifer and Bob stood still, looking anywhere but at each other. Sarah spoke sharply.
Allergic-prone Jane is always cautious about her food, making sure there's no crab or shrimp in it. So you thought she wouldn't notice if her drink tasted slightly off, didn't you?
Realizing they had exploited someone's allergies, I felt a deep sense of emptiness. I was genuinely happy when Jennifer said she'd celebrate our team's national championship win.
You actually recorded it, huh?
Bob whispered softly next to Jennifer, who was confronting Sarah.
You can't just record a customer's conversation. That's an invasion of privacy. It was to prevent fraud. I didn't want you guys scamming me out of money like you did with Bob. So, you've been doing this sort of thing before, haven't you?
As I glared Jennifer and Bob, Jennifer twisted her body and replied in a sickly sweet voice.
No, that's not it. Bob was being pestered by this woman, so I just tried to help him out. Plus, I didn't do anything to you, Susan. The conversation with Bob was just a joke.
Oh really? Sorry about that. I stood up, intentionally stumbling over Jennifer's bag placed on the floor. Contents spilled out from the unzipped bag. Spotting my card amidst the scattered items, I quickly snatched it and held it up high.
Now why is my card coming out of Jennifer's bag? That's strange.
What's this crumpled note? Drug the old hag with a bunch of sleeping pills, make her sleep, raid the shop, and then withdraw the old man's inheritance from the ATM. This will make the White family's savings mine.
That sounds like a crime plan.
The note spread out on the table was scribbled in Jennifer's messy handwriting. Bob clutched his forehead, groaning.
Idiot! Why were you carrying that around? I forget things easily. Forgot to throw it away.
With all this evidence, I thought she'd finally give in, but instead, Jennifer pointed a finger at me, getting even more angry.
It's mostly your fault.
Me?
Yes. Because you put such stingy thoughts into your son's head, I'm the one who's suffering.
I was taken aback as Jennifer distorted her beautiful face and continued.
Mike, even though he's a section manager at a major company and makes good money, he manages the finances himself. He only gives me an allowance of $1,000 a month. That's way too low. For a housewife, getting that much seems pretty generous.
Jennifer snapped at the shocked Sarah.
How? Mike told me to save from that, but once I go to fancy restaurants and spas, it's all gone. Bob just mooches off me after feeding him. It's not my fault. You're the one who cheated with an ordinary person.
Bob shrugged.
Hey, you proposed to Mike because of his sincerity, didn't you?
Jennifer twisted her lips into a smirk.
Of course not. I was attracted to his money and future prospects. I thought if I married him, I'd get to eat fancy food without working, but after marrying, I was disappointed by how stingy he was.
Bob, crossing his arms, nodded deeply.
When I found the bank book at my in-laws, there were a lot of zeros. Yeah, right. Since it's there, we should spend it, right? We're family after all. What's wrong with taking family money?
I felt drained. I couldn't even find the energy to be angry. I had hoped for a bright and cheerful daughter-in-law, someone opposite to me, to have a good relationship with, but now, I just felt sorry for my past self. I wonder how Mike, who had been listening from the other side of the door, felt. Just as I began to regret today's plan, the door quietly opened, and Mike entered. I see. Mike said briefly, looking coldly at the stunned Jennifer and Bob.
All the money I worked hard for, you were handing it over to this guy, huh? No! I was just treating him to nice food because he had no money. And helping him out with living expenses. It's the same thing. Well, it's partly my fault for not seeing Jennifer's true nature.
Taking a deep breath, Mike declared.
Let's get a divorce. You should move out by tomorrow. Huh? Wait a minute. If we get kicked out of our condo, where are we supposed to go? I won't be able to enjoy good food anymore.
A flustered Jennifer looked at Mike with pleading eyes and spoke in a pitiful voice.
I'm so sorry. I'll reflect on everything, just don't divorce me. I'll even break up with Bob. It's too little, too late. Divorce me and get a job yourself. I don't want to. I enjoy living luxuriously on my husband's money. It doesn't make sense with the money I earned myself.
Hearing her absurd reasoning, Mike shook his head tiredly.
Why don't you remarry another rich guy? Though, it seems you have something else to take care of first. Huh?
Excuse me. A man's voice echoed, and the door opened. A stern-faced man entered the room.
I'm with the police. Jennifer White and Bob Harrison, you are under suspicion for drugging and robbery crime. Please come with us to the station.
They were shown a police badge. Jennifer and Bob, mouths agape, seemed unable to grasp the situation.
Why were you waiting for us? I called them. Both of you just attempted it this time, but it seems you might have more crimes up your sleeves. We need to check the recording on your phone, if you could please hand it over.
Neither Jennifer nor Bob had the courage to argue with the detective and were escorted out quietly. I went to apologize to the restaurant staff and the manager for causing a commotion. Actually, I had reserved the entire place so as not to disturb other guests. Mike, Sarah, and I returned to our table and enjoyed our meal from the main beef dish to dessert, savoring even Jennifer and Bob's portions. We left the restaurant both full and satisfied. When the police investigated Jennifer and Bob, it turned out they had many past crimes. The pair would use their partners' credit cards without permission, get them drunk to learn their PINs, and then run off with money from their bank accounts. Their modus operandi seemed to be working somewhere while looking for targets, robbing them, then quitting their job and moving to another place. There were already reports filed against them, but with lack of hard evidence and their frequent moves across the country, they managed to avoid detection. But this time, they finally got caught. The two were sentenced to prison, and naturally, Mike and Jennifer divorced. Even when Jennifer is released, she's gonna have to keep paying for her sins. After the property split, including the value of the condo and cars, she's left with $20,000. For someone who finds working diligently unbearable, it's a daunting amount. I hope Jennifer will change her ways and lead a decent life from now on. Seeing the shock Mike experienced from this incident, I purposely avoided mentioning it. Especially right after, he was deeply depressed, saying, "It's because I was so engrossed in work that I gave them an opening." I even troubled my mom. However, being assigned to manage a new project at work helped him regain his spirits. And 3 years later, Mike brought his fiancée home. She was a simple, kind-looking woman. They had reconnected at a high school reunion. Knowing her background was reassuring. I genuinely hope Mike finds happiness this time. Since the incident, I occasionally meet up with Sarah to chat. Though she's younger, we share similar tastes in books and movies, so we get along. I reserve her place for our choir group parties and invite her to our performances. We've maintained a friendly relationship. Sadly, we finished in 5th place in the national competition, but we've set a new goal to make it into the top 3 next time. I want to continue living modestly, fully enjoy my hobbies and social life, and lead a life true to myself.
Welcome home, both of you. You must be hungry. I whipped up some pasta today.
Upon returning home, Lisa, my eldest son's wife who had never cooked before, greeted us with those words. "Something's definitely up."
Oh, looks delicious. Don't you think so, Mom?
That was my eldest son, Robert. Indeed, the pasta laid out on the table looked appetizing. But, for some reason, the pasta emanated an indescribable sense of unease. "It's too suspicious." Urged by Lisa, we sat down, and Robert asked if we should start eating. Can we really eat this without any issue? The way Robert and Lisa are intently watching us, it feels like they're urging us to hurry up and eat. What am I gonna do now? Just then.
Hello.
That voice ended up saving me from this precarious situation. My name is Catherine Harper. After a divorce 30 years ago, I moved back to my family home in Nebraska. My parents have since passed away, and now I live alone. Many might think that living alone at the age of 73 must be challenging and lonely, but it's not. Compared to where I lived before, the cost of living here is lower, and all my neighbors are kind folks. My hobby of enjoying coffee, among other things, keeps me entertained, making life enjoyable. But, in such a peaceful life, even slight disturbances can become stressful. The two who are about to come are perfect examples.
Hello there. Just the two of you today? We took time out of our busy schedule to come over, and you sound disappointed. This is why Lisa doesn't like you.
Hey! There's no reason for me to dislike such a kind mother-in-law like you. Right, Catherine? The slightly sarcastic remark came from my eldest son, Robert. And the blatantly insincere words are from his wife, Lisa. 20 years ago, the two met as colleagues at the same company. They started dating a month later and got married 6 months after that. I remember being taken aback by how quickly things progressed between them. Everything, from meeting the parents to the wedding, was rushed. There was no time to second-guess any decisions. People used to make snide comments about their marriage.
There's no way they'll last with such a short courtship.
They're probably gonna divorce soon anyway. Each time I'd hear such comments, my heart would ache as their mother. But, fast forward, and they've been married for 20 years. They even have kids and, contrary to everyone's expectations, they're living a happy life. From a mother's perspective, I can't help but be amazed at how well things turned out. Hey, Mom. Mom. Were you listening?
Oh. I'm sorry. I was lost in thought.
Please stop spacing out like that, Catherine. Turning senile at 73? That's a bit too early, don't you think? At this rate, we might have to consider putting you in a care home. Lisa is generally kind, but every once in a while, she'd make such condescending remarks.
But, what Lisa's saying does make some sense. If you start having mobility issues post-70, it'd be a pain for us. It'd be the end of the world.
Exactly. How about considering moving to a care home now? It would ease our worries. Right, Catherine?
Seriously. What do they think of me? This isn't the first time Robert and Lisa have been thoughtless like this. I'm not ready for a care home. I'm not that old yet. You're delusional if you think you're still young at 70 plus. Heaven's right around the corner for you. There's no need to pretend otherwise.
Hearing them talk about care homes and heaven, my spirit dampens. But, thankfully, there's an angelic presence that comes to my rescue. Dad! Mom! Stop being so mean to Grandma!
Why are you here when you said you were going out with friends? My friend had something come up, so I couldn't go. But more importantly, apologize to Grandma.
This girl is Kayla, a 17-year-old high school student. Unlike her parents, she's incredibly genuine and sweet.
Yeah, I get it. I'll apologize. Catherine, I'm sorry. I'll try to be kinder next time.
Mom. Don't be sarcastic. Apologize properly. Thank you, Kayla. I'm okay. Thank you for standing up for me. Such a kind-hearted girl. In contrast to her parents. Glancing to the side, her dad seemed unapologetic, lounging around, while her mom looked disgruntled. Kayla then urged her parents to leave. Bye, Grandma, I'll come visit again soon. And with that, they left. The next morning, after breakfast and during her house chores, the doorbell rang. Kayla, good morning. You're early today. Opening the door, there she was. Good morning, Grandma. I'm meeting a friend later, but I wanted to see you first. Kayla has always visited frequently since she was little. Be careful out there. Yep, I'll see you later. Seeing Kayla's lively demeanor always lifts my spirits. Just as I was about to get back to cleaning, the doorbell rang again. Just a moment. Rushing to the door, her son and daughter-in-law were about to enter the house. Hey! At least say something before barging in. It's startling. It's not a big deal. Did Kayla come by? Ignoring my comment, they walked in. Sitting down on the sofa. Give us some of that coffee.
It's not fair if you only make it for Kayla.
They were probably referring to the special coffee I make whenever Kayla visits. I've always loved coffee, grinding the beans myself. Nowadays, even neighbors ask for it. And my grandson, he loves that coffee, and every time he comes over, we enjoy it together. I let out a sigh, said,
"Hold on a sec,"
and went to the kitchen to grind the beans. Just then, I heard a beep sound from behind. Wondering what it was, I turned around. The only thing out of place was my eldest son and his wife, Bob and Kayla, staring at a cell phone they'd laid on the table. Curious, I tilted my head.
"What are you doing? Hurry up and make that thing."
"Hey, Catherine, I'm parched over here." I was still puzzled by that beep, but I knew that if I left Bob and Kayla waiting any longer, it'd become a bigger hassle. As I began grinding the beans again, Lisa chimed in.
"You know, Catherine, you have such simple tastes. I don't get why grinding beans is fun for you." "Oh. Maybe it's practice for when you move to the retirement home? I don't want to drink coffee you've practiced on."
Suddenly, in a condescending voice I'd never heard before, Lisa made a sarcastic remark. It was then that I felt a sense of revulsion towards her for the first time. Robert, who was next to her, chimed in.
"True that. Making your own son and daughter-in-law drink something like that. I can't believe any decent person would do such a thing. When did my mom become this kind of person? Is getting old really this cruel? It's just so sad."
Robert too made a sarcastic remark in an unfamiliar low voice. Then, right next to him, Lisa again made a snide comment in a creepy, mocking tone. It was as if some third-rate actor was putting on a show. The whole scene was just terrifying. Yet the two of them didn't stop, they kept on going.
"My mom's lost it. Seems like she doesn't even know what she's doing or saying anymore. How did it come to this?
Maybe it'd be better if she just moved on to the next life sooner. But knowing her, she'll probably hang on for a long time."
Why did they have to go so far in their remarks? What's gotten into both of you?
Enough is enough.
But they were so engrossed in their phones, they didn't even hear me. Suddenly, Robert and Lisa stood up, grabbed their bags, and left as if nothing had happened. I felt a chill run down my spine from their incomprehensible behavior.
What on earth is going on?
I thought about confiding in someone, but how could I even begin to describe what had just happened? I spent the night restless, overwhelmed by my thoughts. But the next day, Robert and Lisa came back. The memory of yesterday flashed through my mind, leaving me uncertain of how to approach them. Then, from behind Robert and Lisa, a little face popped out saying,
"Grandma, what's up?"
Their daughter, Kayla, had come with them. Not wanting to worry my beloved granddaughter with my troubles, I acted as if everything was normal.
"Want something to drink?"
"Yeah. I want some of Grandma's coffee."
"Sure thing. How about you too?"
However, Robert and Lisa just sat there with sullen expressions, not saying a word. Seeing her parents like that, Kayla looked puzzled. Without understanding why they remained silent, I brewed some homemade coffee. "Here you go." Kayla eagerly sipped her coffee, saying,
"Delicious. I can't start my day without Grandma's coffee."
In stark contrast, Robert and Lisa sat motionless, not touching their coffees at all. It had probably gone cold and wasn't tasty anymore. Then, Lisa took a sip of her cold coffee. Disgusting. Those words stung. Then,
"Kayla, we're gonna head out now,"
said Lisa.
"Huh?
We just got here," Kayla responded. But without another word, Robert and Lisa left.
"Mom and Dad were weird today. Do you think something's up?"
"I don't know. For the past 2 weeks, Robert and his wife Lisa had started coming here almost daily. Even when spoken to, they'd just ignore and stay glued to their phones.
"Why don't you talk?"
Even when hesitantly questioned, there was no response. Unable to bear the tension, the TV was turned on to distract from the awkwardness. It was the same routine every time. By that point, their very presence began to instill fear. Then, one unexpected day, something unforeseen happened. It was in the evening when I was about to head out for grocery shopping. A message from Robert popped up on the phone, "Gonna be there soon."
Gonna be here, now?
True to his text, Robert and Lisa arrived 5 minutes later. Opening the front door, there they stood. However, today was different.
Hello. Beautiful weather we're having. We're dropping in.
After constantly ignoring, now they suddenly spoke as if they were different people. This sudden change intensified the feeling of unease towards Robert and Lisa.
Mom, could you make me some coffee? I'm really in the mood for your coffee today. Oh. That's not fair. Catherine, can I have some coffee too?
Baffled by their sudden shift in behavior, I just nodded. While grinding the beans, a glance towards them revealed both laughing and chatting, a stark contrast from their usual selves. Then, they spoke to me.
I'll have it black.
I'd like 3 sugars, please.
They both sipped their freshly made coffee with smiles. Suddenly, Lisa exclaimed,
"Oh, I forgot. Honey, can you go pay this month's phone bill for me?"
"Got it. Mom, let's head to the nearby convenience store." "Huh?" My eldest son, Robert, grabbed my arm and dragged me forcefully to a nearby convenience store. All for a cell phone bill. Why do I have to go with him? It's not like he doesn't know where the place is. After paying the bill, when I thought we were headed straight home, Robert said something I never expected. "The cherry blossoms are blooming in the park nearby. Wanna go see them?"
Sure, but wouldn't it be better if Lisa came with us?
Lisa's not interested in cherry blossoms. So, it was decided that we'd go to a nearby park to see the cherry blossoms. To think that Robert would suggest such a thing. The kindness that Robert, who has always been so cold towards me, showed brought a sense of fear and made me even more wary of him. But, that feeling of caution slowly faded as I gazed upon the beautiful blossoms in the park.
They're beautiful.
Yet, that feeling of caution returned due to Robert's actions. He had suggested visiting the cherry blossoms, but he showed no interest in them and kept checking his watch. Guess it's about time to head back. We got in the car, all the while I kept a suspicious eye on Robert. Once we reached home and entered the living room.
Welcome back, both of you. Hungry? I made pasta today.
Suddenly, Robert's wife, Lisa, said that. Lisa cooking was something that had never happened before. After ignoring me for so long, suddenly she's cooking? And it's not even 6 p.m. yet? Something's definitely up.
Looks delicious, doesn't it? Mom, you think so too, right?
Robert said. Indeed, the pasta on the table looked appetizing. But, there's something about that pasta that's unsettling. It looks too suspicious. Encouraged by Lisa, I took a seat. Just as I was about to take a bite, Robert spoke up.
Ready to eat?
Can I really eat this without any repercussions? The two of them were staring intently, urging me to eat. What should I do now? Then, at that moment.
Hello.
That voice, is that you, Kayla?
Suddenly, the voice of my granddaughter could be heard, causing Robert and Lisa to panic. And the two of them quickly headed for the front door.
Where's Grandma?
I could hear Kayla's voice.
Kayla. Why are you here?
What do you mean, why? I always come over. More importantly, isn't it rare for the two of you to be here at this time? Why are you here?
Well, we just thought we'd have dinner with Catherine for a change.
Their panicked state was evident. But, such a coincidence. Kayla came over at the perfect time.
Now's my chance.
With Robert and Lisa preoccupied with Kayla, I quickly switched my plate of pasta with Lisa's. Then, I composed myself, waiting for the couple to return. When they did, Lisa exclaimed.
Thank you for waiting, Catherine.
I thought we could eat together. Where did Kayla go?
She went shopping. We only had this prepared for dinner, so we sent her to buy her own meal. Lisa replied. That can't be right. There's plenty of food in the fridge. Making her go shopping on purpose? It just makes things even more suspicious.
Shall we dig in right away? Yeah.
Robert and Lisa, just like before, waited for me to start eating first. There's definitely something up. But I should be fine, after all, I just switched plates with Lisa. There shouldn't be anything wrong with this one. With determination, I take a bite of the pasta.
Mom, how is it? What do you mean?
What do I mean? The taste, of course. It's all about the taste.
Robert and Lisa seem to be deflecting with humor and about to start eating as well.
It looks delicious. Told you.
But even as they say that, the two of them, forks in hand, don't touch their pasta and keep glancing over at me. Their behavior is making it hard to focus on my meal, but everything feels normal so far. Feeling reassured, I continue eating. Finally, with puzzled looks, Robert and Lisa start eating their pasta. But then, suddenly,
oh!
Lisa's demeanor changes drastically.
I knew it.
After secretly switching plates with Lisa, she took a bite and immediately began choking. She began to struggle and then fell over, chair and all. I can't believe something like this is happening right before my eyes.
Hey! Lisa, are you okay? Stay with me.
It was supposed to be me eating that pasta. And now, something awful has happened to Lisa because of it.
Lisa! Lisa! Stay with me. Open your eyes.
An ambulance was called immediately, and it arrived within 5 minutes. Lisa was carried by paramedics into the ambulance. Neighbors began to gather, watching the scene unfold. The presence of the ambulance brought out the nearby residents. Seeing this, Robert shouted,
Don't look! Stay back!
10 minutes later, Lisa was rushed to the hospital. As I watched the ambulance drive away,
Grandma, what happened? Did someone get hurt?
Kayla, let me tell you.
When I explained everything to my returning granddaughter, her astonishing response was, she got what she deserved. After all, it could have been you in that ambulance, Grandma.
What do you mean?
Come with me, she said, leading me back into the house. Pointing to a certain spot in the living room, she added, Do you recognize this? It's a camera, a small one. Mom was secretly recording.
Secretly recording? Why?
Here's the deal. Recently, Robert and Lisa had become obsessed with making videos, and they would constantly film amusing situations to post on social media. At first, it was all harmless prank videos. But as these became more popular, they sought even greater attention, leading them to film increasingly audacious and extreme content.
So, all those times they ignored me or made snide remarks.
They were filming all of that too. Remember the phone on the table? That's what they were using to record. And the ultimate video they had planned was to capture someone's reaction to severe discomfort. They targeted me, their mother-in-law.
That's terrifying. But what were they trying to do?
This, Kayla said, pulling out a chili pepper.
A chili pepper? What about it?
They crushed a lot of these and put them into your pasta. They wanted to film you struggling after eating something super spicy. I felt a surge of anger. All that for some online popularity? Robert is just as guilty for not stopping it. But there's one thing I'm curious about. I understood they tried to torture me by adding spicy stuff, but why did Lisa foam at the mouth and faint? While I was pondering this, Kayla told me a shocking truth. She's allergic. Turns out, Lisa has a severe chili pepper allergy. Apparently, she had once fainted after eating food containing chili peppers. Since then, she had been careful not to eat them. It makes sense that if Lisa, with her chili pepper allergy, ate that spicy pasta so eagerly, she'd have that reaction. That night, when Robert returned from the hospital, he told me that Lisa would be hospitalized for a week. Robert blamed me for everything that happened. Then, Kayla chimed in.
I can't believe a grown-up would blame someone else like this. You're no longer my dad or mom to me. You're just some messed up old folks.
At a loss for words after being told off by his own daughter, Robert was just stunned. I added, I won't say much. I'm cutting ties with you too. Don't come here anymore.
If you do, I'll call the cops on you as a suspicious person."
Watching Robert leave in shock, Kayla and I high-fived, saying,
"Grandma, you're awesome. Thank you."
Later, when Lisa was discharged, Robert told her that I had cut ties with him and that Kayla had left their home. Lisa suddenly went berserk. Seeing this, Robert hurriedly called the police. 10 minutes later, the officers arrived and took Lisa away, even though she had just been discharged. With Lisa gone, Robert apparently packed his stuff and moved out of their apartment. No idea where he is or what he's doing now. Moreover, even after being taken to the police station, Lisa's erratic state didn't calm down. She was subsequently taken to a mental health facility where she's still residing.
"Grandma, I'm off."
Take care and do your best.
Yeah.
It's been a year since then. Kayla moved out of her parents' house and now lives with me. Today, her life begins as a working adult and as a woman. Being able to witness Kayla's growth. There's no greater joy. I'm confident that my life ahead will be even brighter and more joyful.
I can't forget my ex-girlfriend. Go on your honeymoon alone.
He told me that bluntly. Though our honeymoon was just a day away and plans to officially tie the knot once we returned, he had the audacity to say that to his fiancée.
"Fine, I'll go by myself then."
My fiancé chose his affair over me. I have no lingering feelings for him anymore. I decided I'd never come back here and set off on a solo trip. My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm just an average woman in my 20s, working freelance. Currently, I'm engaged. I've been dating my partner since college, his name being Jason Miller. Given recent circumstances, we decided not to have a wedding ceremony. To be honest, I wasn't really concerned about wearing a wedding dress or having a big ceremony. Jason didn't seem too interested either, so it didn't matter. Both parents had seen each other, and the only thing we did was buy our rings. All that was left was to submit our marriage license on our upcoming anniversary in a few months. We're currently living together in our new home as an engaged couple. Although we aren't legally married yet, we're already wearing our rings and living as if we were a married couple. After living like this for a while, Jason suddenly suggested, "Hey, wanna go on a trip next long weekend?" At the end day of that long weekend was coincidentally the scheduled day to become officially married. We had plans to go to the city hall but hadn't thought much beyond that.
You mean?
It means our honeymoon. We're not having a ceremony, so we might as well take a trip, right?
I was surprised since I hadn't expected Jason to suggest something like this. He usually left holiday plans and marriage procedures up to me. To be honest, I'd given up on him in that regard. We're both busy with work, and Jason isn't really into traveling. I had written off the idea of a honeymoon entirely.
That sounds great. I'd love to go,
I said excitedly. And just like that, our honeymoon was set in a hurry. After much discussion and considering the sudden nature of our plans, we decided to travel domestically. I'd be happy with anywhere. The mere fact that Jason suggested we take a trip together already made me so happy. You can choose wherever you want to go. But in the end, he left it up to me. At that time, I was just so thrilled I didn't mind at all. Given it was the hot summer season, I decided we'd go to Alaska. I reminded of a while back, Jason mentioned while watching TV, I've never been to Alaska. I'd love to visit. It had been some time, so he probably didn't recall saying that. But, hoping it would make him happy, I started planning our trip in detail. Looking back, that was probably the happiest time. I never imagined the heartache that would come next. A little after I began our travel preparations, Jason had a high school reunion to attend. Jason and I met during our college years. So, I hardly knew any of his high school friends. Since I knew he was going to a party where both men and women would be attending, it wasn't exactly comforting. Yet, Jason cheerfully said, "I'm gonna announce to everyone that we're getting married." He said that with a cheerful bounce in his step and headed out. I didn't want to rain on his parade, so I kept quiet and watched him go. I mean, we're practically newlyweds, his coming back home probably wouldn't be too late. Considering we're about to be officially married, his friends would surely understand he shouldn't be out too long. That's what I kept telling myself to avoid worrying too much. However, the time the reunion was supposed to end came and went, and Jason didn't come home. He said he'd be back after the main event. I called him several times out of concern but couldn't get through. I just hoped he wasn't getting too carried away. Much to my dismay, Jason didn't come home until the next morning. Sorry, we just got so caught up," he said when he woke up around noon. Honestly, I didn't mind him coming home late. But at least he could have given me a message. He always used to let me know before. I found myself getting a bit irritated. There would have been other women at the reunion. Coming home in the morning after such an event doesn't sit right with me. But mentioning every little thing would just make me seem clingy, and I didn't want that.
"Hey, think a bit more next time. We're practically newlyweds."
I said that and left it there. Probably he got caught up and missed the last train or something. There's nothing for me to worry about. At least, that's what I thought. But since that day, I felt something changed. Jason's behavior seemed off. Is this what they call a woman's intuition? All I noticed were minor things. Nothing concrete. But something felt amiss. He started coming home a bit later than usual. He began taking his cell phone to the restroom or when changing clothes. And he seemed distant even when I tried to strike up a conversation. Just small changes. Minor as they were, something inside me felt a warning. The Jason I knew was somehow different now. Did something happen at the reunion? That's what I started to think. But I didn't have the courage to turn my suspicions into certainty. Snooping through his phone, or confronting him directly. I was afraid to take such actions. If there was an issue, what would I do? We're about to get officially married, and if there's an issue? The thought scared me, and I couldn't muster the courage to move forward. And with those feelings, the day of our trip was gradually approaching. Jason seemed to be lost in his thoughts as usual. There were many days he didn't seem to really listen to what I said. "Hey, are you listening?" Even when I asked that, he'd reply, "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Just been worn out from work." And he wouldn't engage. We hadn't had a proper conversation in days. When he got home, he'd often just go straight to sleep. What kind of married life is this for a couple who's essentially newlyweds? I wished we could spend more time talking and being together. I was filled with unease. Could I truly enjoy our honeymoon with things being this way? Doubts clouded my mind. And then, I crossed a line I shouldn't have. It was the day Jason came home drunk from a company happy hour. He dozed off on the living room couch. From his hand, his cell phone slipped with a thud. I picked it up, intending to put it on the table. At that moment, a notification caught my eye. I hadn't intended to snoop. But by sheer chance, it caught my eye. The sender's name was Jessica. A message from a woman. I couldn't see the entire text in that split second, but I think it said something like, "Did you deceive your wife? Can't wait to see you again." The moment I saw that, I felt the blood drain from my face. See him again? Deceive? Me? A sinking feeling washed over me. The uneasy feeling I'd been vaguely sensing seemed to be materializing before my very eyes. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't resist. Making sure Jason was fast asleep, I took the phone. I always knew Jason didn't have a lock on his phone. I believed it was because he trusted me and had nothing to hide. Hesitantly, I checked the messages. What I saw was absolutely shocking. Today, Jason had said he was at a company happy hour, but it seemed that was a lie. In reality, he had met with a woman named Jessica. Up until a few moments ago, my fiancé had been alone with another woman. And he lied to me, saying it was a work-related outing. Won't your newlywed wife get suspicious? It's fine. Told her it's a company outing. She's pretty oblivious, she won't catch on. That's awful, being so deceitful to her. It seems they had this conversation earlier in the day. right around the time he told me he wouldn't need dinner because of the company outing. I had believed him, thinking a work event was a valid reason. Looking back through their conversation, the earliest message was from a month ago. From the day of the high school reunion. I was surprised to see how beautiful you've become. Breaking up was a mistake. If I had stayed with Jason, I'd be the one married to him. That's how their conversation started. It seems this Jessica was Jason's ex-girlfriend. Probably someone he dated in high school. By the time I met him, they had already broken up, so their relationship should have been long over. Maybe they rekindled things after seeing each other at the reunion. We're practically newlyweds and about to have our honeymoon. This kind of betrayal at such a time is unforgivable. Holding back my anger, I calmly took screenshots of their conversation. Just saw you, but I already miss you. I care about Jessica more than my wife. I love you. Why don't you leave your wife and marry me? I can satisfy you better, can't I? While I was taking shots of such delusional exchanges as evidence, tears streamed down my face. Was I the only one who thought we were happy? I thought I was gonna spend my life with him. Was that just a fleeting dream? After capturing all the evidence, I gently placed the phone back beside my husband. One thing's for sure, my mind is made up. I'll just go with the flow. Time flew, and it was finally the night before our trip. I had everything ready for our vacation. I asked Jason, "Have you packed yet?" But Jason just looked down, staying silent. What's wrong? After my repeated questioning, he finally spoke up, looking like he'd made up his mind. I can't go on our honeymoon with Sarah. He looked straight at me, and Jason continued speaking. He had an expression that seemed like he had finally let go or become defiant. I can't forget my ex. I want you to go on the honeymoon alone. He said it right to my face. With our honeymoon set for the next day and plans to get legally married after our return, he boldly declared to his fiancée. I can't forget my ex. You should go on the honeymoon by yourself. So you're choosing your ex over me? I asked, trying to stay calm. Not expecting me to be so composed, Jason firmly said, yes. I'm not gonna travel with Sarah. Jessica is the one I care about. He spoke as if intoxicated by his own words. Like he was trying to justify his actions or play the part of a tragic love story's protagonist. Listening to him, my decision became more solid. All right. I'll go alone then. I responded, getting up and heading towards our bedroom. Before closing the door, I don't want to see your face. Why don't you go to Jessica's place? Don't come back here till I leave for the trip. I said that. He replied, got it. I won't be coming back tonight. He left the house, calling someone. Probably Jessica, that woman he's cheating with. They're probably having a great night from now. That woman must be looking pretty smug right now. If she wants a cheater, I'll let her have. I'm over it. Left alone at home, I started preparing for my trip tomorrow. The next day, I was on a plane. Heading solo to Alaska. I had torn up the extra ticket which was written Jason's name when I left the house. He probably won't be coming home tonight. He's at his lover's place after all. I suppose if he does reach out, it'd be after he's home. With those thoughts, I arrived in Alaska. By the time I got there, it was beginning to get dark. Took longer than I thought. Might as well treat myself to a nice seafood dinner, local to Alaska. After a while, my phone rang. Of course, it was Jason. Probably returned from his lover's place. After checking out the situation at home, he called me. I kinda had an idea what this was about, but I might as well pick up. Hello? Hey! Where the hell are you? He yelled right off the bat. The volume of his voice caught me off guard, and I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear. Loud much. I'm in Alaska, where you told me to go, right? I replied with a sigh. Why? Well, you're the one who did let me go on the honeymoon alone, didn't you? That's not the point. Even over the phone, it was clear. Jason was clearly panicking. I could tell from the tone of his voice. What the hell were you thinking? Why is the house empty? Before I left for Alaska, I had tidied up my personal affairs. Modern moving companies are pretty darn efficient. Maybe it's tailored to folks who need to get out in a jiffy. Apparently, they can handle same-day moves. Well, I'd been researching this for a while and had already chosen a company.
You mean I moved?
Isn't it obvious? Why'd you take all the furniture? We were living there together, this doesn't make any sense. We lived there together, but all the furniture was mine. What are you talking about? Most of the things in that house were purchased when I was living on my own. There were some newer items, but I paid for all of them. Jason always said he'd pay me back later, but never did. So, without a doubt, that furniture is mine. He has no say in what I do with it.
And what's this about moving? Why all of a sudden?
Did he think, after his affair, that I would stay in that house for any longer? If so, that's some naive thinking on his part.
I'll have to buy my own furniture. Why would you?
I thought I might give Jason a little more shock. I grinned. Oh, and about the house lease, it's up at the end of the month. You'll need to move out by then, okay? With that, I dropped the bombshell. It's almost the end of the month now. Only a few days left till the contract ends.
What? You canceled the lease without telling me. What the hell?
Well, the lease was in my name. When we were settling the house lease, Jason pushed all the hassle onto me. It's a pain with the names and all. Just put it in Sarah's name. You handle everything. That's what he told me, so I signed the lease under my name. At first, we split the rent, but lately, he hasn't been contributing much, leaving me to cover it all. Yeah, but where the hell am I gonna live starting next month? I don't know. Why don't you go back to your parents' house?
Come on. I can't just go back, you know that.
Jason's parents are incredibly strict folks. They're the kind of people who'd never tolerate cheating. They wouldn't even acknowledge us living together until we had an official engagement. What would happen if those strict parents found out about the affair and he got kicked out of the house? I can easily imagine how that would play out.
You know, if my folks find out, I'm toast. Just come back home for now.
Having an affair and expecting such a sweet deal is pretty audacious. Does he think I'll just forgive and come back?
There's no way I'm coming back. You chose your affair over your fiancé, me. Sooner or later, your folks are gonna find out.
That's not true.
Jason quickly denies it. What exactly isn't true?
I did say I wasn't going on a trip with Sarah, but I never said I wasn't gonna marry you. I still plan on marrying Sarah. I can't have you disappearing on me.
He's spouting some outrageous nonsense. He openly cheats, yet expects to go ahead with our marriage plans. There's no way that's happening. Once you cheat, marriage is off the table. Remember when you said you couldn't forget your ex, how she meant a lot to you?
I did say that. But that's one thing, and this is another. I can't forget Jessica, she's important to me. But I'm gonna marry Sarah.
His logic is all over the place. Seems like he wants me to accept his affair and still go ahead with the marriage. It seems he's less fixated on me and more worried about his parents finding out if I call off the wedding. Such a disrespectful attitude really gets under my skin.
Too bad, there's no way I'd agree to that.
I told him firmly. There's no point in enduring such a hellish marriage. Such an injustice shouldn't be tolerated. And by the way, if you're so worried about your parents finding out, it's too late. What? I've already sent them all the evidence. They know everything now.
What the heck?
Right as I got off the plane, I sent all the evidence to Jason's parents digitally. They'll also receive a physical copy in the mail soon.
What? What the hell did you do?
The only one who did something out of line was you, wasn't it? You chose your mistress over our honeymoon. I have no intentions of marrying someone like that. I said that and hung up the phone. Jason kept trying to contact me persistently, but I ignored every single one. I informed his parents about breaking off the engagement and asked them not to contact me, then blocked their numbers. Looking back, I'm glad we hadn't planned a wedding yet. Thinking about cancellation fees and all gives me the chills. Thankfully, we hadn't officially registered the marriage yet, so there's no paperwork or anything to deal with. I guess I should just be grateful that this all came out before the paperwork was finalized. If Jason would have truly changed his ways once we were married. I had hoped for a moment. But it was clear that his heart had completely drifted away, and getting back together would probably be impossible. So, I decided to settle everything and break away from Jason. Luckily, my job allows me to work from anywhere since I'm a freelancer. It's a huge perk being able to be on the move so easily. Once this solo trip to Alaska is over, I'm planning to head back to my parents' place. I do intend to live alone again once I've settled down. Finding a new place in just these few days would have been impossible. For now, I'm just gonna enjoy Alaska and forget everything. Turns out, Jason got a serious earful from his parents later on. His parents seemed to have really liked me, and they probably couldn't forgive him for betraying and cheating on me. He apparently tried to introduce Jessica to them as his new girlfriend, but they turned her away right at the door. They surely wouldn't accept her. To make matters worse, they even found out that he was trying to rush our marriage just so they wouldn't get mad at him. Telling them that Jessica was his new fiancée in such a vague situation probably only made his parents angrier. From what I've heard, Jason's parents have disowned him and he's basically been cast out. Losing his home and his family, it's quite the mess he's in. Well, considering we weren't married yet, I hope he'd be grateful that I didn't ask for a refund of the house lease or anything like that. After all, had I felt like it, I could have made such demands. But I knew even without doing that, his life would become pretty tough. Jason, to be honest, doesn't make that great of a salary. It's probably a bit below average for his age group. Compared to mine, it's about half. Of course, I never told Jason that because I didn't want to hurt his pride. That's why, even if Jason didn't pay the rent or chip in for living expenses, we managed. That was all thanks to my earnings. But what about Jason now? Suddenly kicked out without any furniture or appliances. Now he's gonna start living on his own, renting a place, and buying all the household appliances. After doing all that, I wonder how much money he'll have left. Seems like he's actually struggling to get by month to month. He probably rented a place close to his work, somewhere similar to before. That area has high rent. Buying all the appliances will cost a lot, and if he continues to eat out, he'll run out of money in no time. Moreover, he can't rely on my income anymore, so his earnings are less than half. His bank balance will hit rock bottom in no time. The reason he could afford dates and hotel stays was because of me, he probably realizes that now. And can a broke guy like him keep an affair going on for long? As expected, Jessica, his affair partner, quickly dumped Jason. She seems to be getting along with a new guy now. So, he lost his fiancée, his family home, his place, and even his affair partner. Even if Jason regrets everything now, there's no turning back. Even without me asking for the repayment, he's bound to lead a difficult life. He's been disowned, so he can't rely on his family. He's truly in a tight spot. As for me, I'm living comfortably at my parents' place. Going about my usual work routine, while looking for a new home and thinking about my new life. When they heard about the broken engagement, my parents were initially shocked. But after hearing the details, they came around and understood. They probably thought it was a good thing that we hadn't legally tied the knot yet. Even mutual friends were very surprised. Well, for me, it's already become something I can laugh about, so I have no intention of hiding it. Probably, rumors will spread, and Jason's social circle will shrink. I expect he'll become estranged from the friends he made during college too. After a solo trip to a place like Alaska, I've become hooked on traveling alone. Now I'm planning to maybe head somewhere down south next. Although I've gone through the uncommon experience of breaking off an engagement, I can't mope around forever. Life's too short after all. I gotta make the most out of it and enjoy it to the fullest.
With that in mind, I'm living every day to the fullest, both at work and in my personal life.